Hello, this is Eric Miskell with EMS Now, and welcome to this edition of EMS Now Up Close. Uh, Been looking forward to this interview and glad to finally get a chance to speak with Brian Lamers. He's the Chief Operating Officer of SMT Corporation. As you will find out, SMT is a smaller EMS, still of good size and capabilities, based out of Wisconsin. And I love this space because everybody focuses on the biggies in the industry, and they forget what excellent work there is being done throughout the industry in all regions by companies such as SMT Corporation. So Brian, thank you for agreeing to come on today and sharing your story with us.
And thank for the opportunity. I think it's really important for some of the smaller businesses in the industry to also have a voice and be able to explain what they see as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So let's begin by introducing yourself and give you an overview of SMT.
So, so my name's Brian Lamers. I'm the COO of Surface Mount Technology Corporation. We're located in Appleton, Wisconsin. We have a facility of 60,000 square feet, and we've been doing EMS services for 28 plus years.
Yeah. And your background, you actually started with your larger neighbor over in that
Yeah,
region.
exactly. So I got introduced into the EMS space while I was in college. I did an internship with Plexus, and
Hmm.
and through that internship, I was able to help them on the materials supply chain side with some automated reporting. And then I went back to school at UW Whitewater and returned back to Plexus after my graduation in December of '96. And so from an early perspective, Plexus was just going through their growth stages. And what
Mhm.
I thought, or what I was able to do, was able to get good experience in their growth. And so I played some roles on the finance side. I was able to play roles in the quoting side. I did some M&A activity with them. I was part of a facility that they built in Buffalo Grove. And so they gave me a very unique opportunity to learn as much as I could. And I just ate all of that stuff up as a continual learner to be able to see all the facets of the business. And it really gave me a very solid foundation in how an EMS company functions, especially one that is focused on the design side and
Yeah.
the manufacturing side as well. And so very much appreciate my time that I spent with them and learned a whole bunch.
Yeah. But then about 18 years ago, you came over to SMT. So what was it that
Yep.
enticed you to this
Yeah.
company?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. When you live within the tier one space and the billion-dollar company, you start to notice a lot of corporate politics. And I noticed that I was spending more time in meetings than I was spending time doing actual real work. And when
Mhm.
the opportunity came up to join SMT, who had been in business for about 10 years, but you could really see the projection that they were going. And it really was excited about the opportunity that I could take all of the stuff that I learned and apply it in the real world and not get caught down into the politics and the drama and the red tape that existed in where I was. And so
Mhm.
it gave me an open slate. And what I've really appreciated in my 18 plus years at SMT is I can go home feeling like I've made a difference. And in bigger companies, it's really hard to do. And from a leadership standpoint, I really seek out our employees to make sure that they understand that they make a difference. And it's
Mhm.
that extra call at 4:45 at night that you could make, or you could just drive home, that yields a PO or a thought process on how we used to do manual time clock entries where some three people spent time doing the math and making sure everybody hours was right to finding something on eBay for $100 and saying, hey, let's just do this.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of those things in place. The other thing that is really intimate is I get to know the vast majority of our workers. So I spend a good deal of time walking out on the floor. I know their personal stories, they know mine, and we laugh and we can have fun. And so at SMT, not only do we like what we do from a craftsman standpoint and get to roll up our sleeves, but we also get to make sure that we take good care of all the people that are a part of our company and our family and have been with us for a long time. And I think that sets the basis of a culture that ends up being really different than what most people would experience in a tier
Mhm.
one, right? I have
Yeah.
I commonly have people walk in my office just unannounced and say, "Hey, here's my idea," or "I noticed this," or "Did you know that?" And we don't put a lot of blame in it. We're a continuously learning environment, and we go ahead and address it. And then I can come back to those people and say, thanks to your idea, we've been able to do this and fix that. And so it ends up being fun. And so
Yeah.
from an SMT standpoint, I think the best thing is I like to be involved. I like to do the work, and I'm not afraid of the work. And I compare it a little bit to a carpenter, right? If you tell the carpenter to go stand in the corner and just do a couple drawings and explain a few things to people every now and then, they don't get to work with their hands, and they don't get to make something at the end. And
Yeah.
so the people that we attract are the people that really enjoy the work, not people that just want to work.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I want to come back to your culture in just a minute. But define for us too, kind of who your customers are. Like I said at the beginning, I mean
Yeah,
these are smaller companies tend to be regional and service the multitude of electronic firms that exist out there.
yeah,
But speak to that if you
yeah.
would.
And so I think the customer question is really a good question, and it kind of just will start overall with overall philosophy when SMT was founded. SMT was founded to serve the niche of the customers that get overlooked by the larger tier ones. So there's a whole bunch of up and coming customers and well-established customers with smaller electronic spends that can't get the attention of the tier one, and that's where SMT really fits well. Now, when you talk a lot of customers, and you'll hear the tier one guys say, well, we focus in on medical, or we focus in on health services, or we focus in on kind of this, and you start to draw all these silos. And so what I tell people is that SMT really doesn't care what industry you're in. It doesn't really matter to us a lot of different factors. The main factor in what I'm looking for in a customer is the customer has a defined problem statement that SMT feels like we can solve. And that customer can convey that problem statement to me. So if you have a supplier issue that is a delivery issue, or you have a supplier issue that's a quality issue, or if you
Mhm.
have some type of DFM that is causing it, and you can sit down and explain it, and you actively want to solve the problem, that fits the SMT model really well. And those that can't verbalize their problem statement, or can verbalize their problem statement but don't want to take the action to actually solve their
Yeah.
problem, we tend to lose within the engagement. And so
Yeah.
what I'm looking for is more of that true partnership where I bring value and I'm recognized for the value that I can bring to the customer. And
Mhm.
within that, SMT has all of the full services that a typical tier one would have. So we have our own engineering team that does nothing but engineering design. So hardware, software, firmware. We do product development from creation to the prototyping stage. We also just jump in and from an engineering side and help customers as needed with technical work. And so they may have a really good engineering team, and we may have a technical answer to a problem, and we'll engage.
Mhm.
And then we have a full service proto group that does nothing but full-time protos. And so we service our engineering team, but we also service outside customers and current customers through our proto group. And then we do full-on manufacturing and all of the services that are within that realm, including full box build and shipping into distribution and
Mhm.
customer virtual manufacturing models. And so
Yeah.
we have a lot of answers to customers when they have questions or when they're not getting the service. And
Yeah.
so we really look for a customer that we can see value in, that wants to work with us.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And you said the issue of having a problem that needs to be fixed. Where do you generally see the engagement starting then in that? Is that more on the design side or where does
It,
it happen?
we see it in all aspects of it, right? And every customer has a unique problem that they're struggling with their current supplier,
Mhm.
and so it depends on what channels they really come through, right? So problems that are early on in the design to a product that hasn't been launched usually start in engineering. somebody that has a proto that was built by somebody else that designed it that doesn't have the manufacturing capabilities, there's usually the initial DFM engagement because nobody knows exactly how to build it, especially when it comes to our team. Our engineers are very involved within our manufacturing facility, so we design it right up front with DFM in it, and we see a lot in the prototype of things that are mismatched or supply chains that they can't be executable at a certain level. And then on the manufacturing side, you see a lot of quality and delivery issues, or now within the geopolitical environment of the tariffs, you're seeing a lot of reshoring back into the U.S. And so those problems end up engaging in our manufacturing. So to me, to answer your question completely, it really depends on what the customer problem is, which
Mhm.
depends on the
Yeah.
engagement. We're seeing a bulk of our new customers that are already building, that are building offshore today, that are looking to find a U.S. domestic partner. And the best part about SMT is we fit that mold because that's who we've been all day, every day. And we're not trying to reinvent ourselves or quickly add space to accommodate that. That's who we've been, and so we're ready to take on those particular customers that had a different thought process before, but somehow within the tariffs and the reshoring political environment are looking for an answer. And whether that's moving everything back or a small piece of it, we're seeing a lot of OEMs making sure that they have a strategy that says we need a U.S. manufacturer on circuit boards to be able to get through this, and making sure that we play into a tariff mitigation strategy.
Yeah. And I would imagine, based on how you've defined the customers and your niche here, is that the volumes vary. And in often cases, there's probably these are volumes that larger tiers aren't interested in.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think you nail on the head. Now SMT has the capabilities to service large customers with
Mhm.
smaller electronic needs. We have the ability to continue to grow. And so I don't want to give you the impression that, we only build 25 a month for a particular customer. We do thousands upon thousands, for customers. But we're not doing the millions upon millions of the stuff that really belongs offshore.
Mhm.
There's a specific domestic niche that is there, and
Mhm.
and what we're seeing is a particular customer with the 30 or 40 million dollars overseas. They're wanting to break off 10% of that has a good logic. It has some automation to it, so it'll run through the surface mount lines. It'll go quick, and therefore the cost difference from what they're paying today and reshoring it to the U.S. Makes that really palatable to them. Plus, it gives them duality in supply and some supply chain resilience if the political system continues to shift.
Yeah. It always strikes me when I talk to EMS companies such as yours that there are so many EMS in the industry, right? I mean, that's always been our industry's been plagued by too many players in many cases. And as you go from the tiered into the lower, there become many, many more, right?
Yeah.
Smaller type ones, and oftentimes in regions competing for same business. So within that, how do you then differentiate? How do you then, what do you do best then in that in order to stand out?
Yeah. And I think that's a great question, right? We ask ourselves, who are we really competing against, and what do they have, and what don't they have? And so you start at the top with the business model, right? So I referenced earlier in our conversation that we have full design capabilities, right? A lot of people that we run into say they have full design capabilities, and then when you kind of peel the onion back, it's a couple guys that do it on the side, or a manufacturing engineer that
Yes.
used to, and all that stuff. And you don't get the full capabilities of a full-fledged engineering services company that can really sit down and take it cradle to grave, and guys that do it on a regular basis. And so
Mhm.
so the amount of services that we offer really set us apart. And so we tend to compete with companies that do engineering only on our engineering side.
Mhm.
And then we tend to compete with customers that are generally focused on manufacturing, and not prototype and engineering on the manufacturing side. And so the level of services like I said, set us apart. The other thing that I think really sets us apart is we're a bunch of, well, old tier one guys that found a home and having a little fun building EMS products, right? And as
Mhm.
I went out and saw, more companies our size, I go into their parking lot and the parking lot wasn't well maintained, or you get into there and it's like, holy, you don't have the right ESD kind of measures. And so from a culture standpoint, we pack a whole bunch of tier one experience into kind of a lesser EMS tier, but that really ends up working in our favor because we can empower everybody that works for us to make really good decisions, and we can
Yeah.
empower our team to have a little bit of fun, and we cut through the red tape. I have people that come into my office on a regular basis and say, I just can't get used to this. I used to have to pitch, this idea of I wanted to hire somebody, or I needed capital for this for months, and then I would compete against seven other people, and I get drawn into this. And I said, we don't care about that. What we care about is how do we get things done and how do we keep this moving forward. And so
Yeah.
that's allowed us to really bring out some really cool ideas. We're doing some stuff on the quoting size that I would challenge anybody else with, that is really unique, that sets us apart. But we're able to very systematically continue to bring the business into ways and places and technologies at a really quick pace that larger companies have a harder time to it. And once, from a culture standpoint, you start engaging people in and you're saying, okay, now how can we use this, or how can we bring this automated report in,
Mhm.
or how can I download my interior MRP and sort it and send it out and do all this stuff. And people get really excited about being able to be a part of that, and really make a difference, and really empower them with information and decisions. And
Yeah.
so to me, that's really what sets us apart. And then when you package all of that stuff, what it really means is SMT is able to execute on a known problem statement. We have a plan. We can deliver that plan.
Mhm.
When you're ready to implement that plan, we're ready to go. And we have checklists. And I tell customers, we ask so many questions up front. You might be a little bit annoyed, but this just sets us up for success, right? So how do we make sure the documentation ties out? How do we make sure this? And so we go through all these kind of things up front to make sure that when a kid hits the floor, you get the kid on time. And
Yeah.
when you look at what we're able to do with inventory turns and our on-time delivery, that's really in the bread and butter of being a successful manufacturing company, is looking at those metrics, and being able to
Mhm.
say, yes, we execute and all the promises we made in the sales process, we can follow through on.
It's interesting. I was going to ask you about the culture, but you've already done that. You're explaining that, which is great, and it's the teamwork culture at smaller companies. But you made the comment before we started the interview about how you win when customers visit because they get
Yep.
to actually see and feel what it's like there. So, comment on that.
Yeah, as we continued to grow, what we figured out very quickly is when we were a price on a piece of paper, we were nothing more than a price on a piece of paper, and we didn't often win. And we would say, hey, we've got all these unique features to offer. We've got some value to add. Why aren't we winning, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't necessarily we were trying to win on price. It was we were trying to win on, here's how we can solve your particular problem. Um, and so we sat down and we mapped out our business and sales strategy. I have it all on paper. We've communicated it to everybody in the organization so that they understand it. It just helps reinforce who we are to everybody. And then we started looking at metrics, and it's like, hey, when somebody showed up at the door and took the time and an hour to meet with the entire management team and sit down across the table in a conference room and said, here's my problem, and we said, here's the solution, we win. And we've had those successful engagements. Our average customer is in the 10 plus years. Our average employee is in the 7.5 years. And so just walking them in to the organization really helps. And one of the stories, I had brought on a new salesperson, and they had brought in a new customer, and they were sitting out in the surface mount line. And she said that she had walked away because the customer was engaging the operators, and we had a bunch of other manufacturing people around, so the salesperson was completely fine with everything.
Hmm.
And they came to me afterwards, and she said, at every other company I worked at, I did my best to not let employees talk and to control the narrative and all that stuff. But here I felt completely comfortable just saying, yeah, they'll tell you straight up how they do it and what they do and
Yeah.
why they do it. And I think that ends up becoming how we win. And once you can see it, and people look around and they're like, it's quiet. I'm like, yeah, everybody's focused, right? So I
Yeah.
can give you a good labor price because everybody knows what the hell they're doing. Nobody's running around trying to expedite things. Everything's on schedule. Work instructions are all clearly displayed. We have monitors that tell you kind of what's next. And so if you bring that back to the customer selection process, that's where we get very picky a little bit from a customer standpoint, right? I can't have one customer really bully me or any of the other
Yeah.
customers in a way that makes customer satisfaction, dissatisfaction across the board. And so when we go through that customer selection process, a part of this whole thing is just let us get the parts and let us run, and when it shows up on your door on a regular basis, and you don't have any quality issues, we've won and solved the problem. But
Yeah.
yes, I have a big pitch. I have an open invitation to anybody and everybody that wants to show up and has a particular problem. We love showing it off. We're really proud of it. You can see the smiles on our employees' faces as customers come through and they engage them and ask them questions, and we tell them about how we're a little bit different, and we're all about the execution, and not as
Mhm.
much about the fluff in the initial PowerPoint presentations, and really let's get down to what it is that you need. And
Yeah. I want to comment too. I think one of the things I've always appreciated about smaller firms is that they're private, right? Like the private, and that gives you a certain freedom, so to speak. You're not a slave to every quarter. So I mean, you still manage your
yep,
business on quarter. I get it, but you don't have that thing, and also decision making becomes a
yep,
lot faster, right? So I mean,
absolutely.
that's all part of your culture there, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think very observant and a great point. I often kid with some people that come in. I said if I was in a leadership role in a public company making the decisions I make, they'd run me out of town and laugh at me and tell me that I was not a good leader because I made bad decisions that affected the stock price. And being a private company, and being that the owner has lived electronics for 40 years, he understands it. And so the vision of SMT was always, we're in it for the long haul, and we're in it for long-term customer satisfaction.
Mhm.
And so when the pandemic hit, we did a lot of things that nobody else really could do, in that we doubled our current inventory. And when we saw a part that was on hand for a customer, I grabbed it, and we just sat on it and all that stuff. And so
Mhm.
so I could make good strategic decisions that really helped customers in the long term that other people couldn't. And I was actually able to get parts out of other EMS suppliers, from the arrows and avnets, from EMS companies that couldn't pay their inventory bills, that they went in there, grabbed them from them, and brought them to me to be able to service my customers and get paid and all that stuff. And
Mhm.
so absolutely, the point hits home very well in that I can custom solutions to customers, based on kind of where we're at. Now, within that framework, I have some very specific rules that says I'm an EMS provider, and I take on some liability, but ultimately the product is yours. And there's decisions that you have to make within the supply chain and within the release schedules and all that stuff. And so the trade-off in my ability to provide solutions ends up the discipline of the customer to continue to execute. And we challenge customers, customers that have delivery issues at other sites. We get into, what do you do? How do you communicate to them? What are you asking for? And when
Mhm.
are you asking for it? And what is your expectation? And how do you have your supply chain set up? And sometimes those can be uncomfortable situations for customers, but we believe, kind of like a counseling session, you have to go through all of that to get to the root cause, and then
Yeah.
we can say, here's the problem solution, and here's what you need to do about it, and here's the value that SMT can bring you as well.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. That's it. So tell me then, you're, smaller companies, you're unique, you're, in that sense, it's some, But you still work within the overall industry that all company,
Yeah.
all EMS function in. So what are the trends that are most impacting your business these days?
Yeah. The biggest trend that we're seeing in the last, call it since January, is the tariff and the reshoring, right? So customers that weren't really seeking out SMT in the past have begun to seek out SMT as a possible solution to the stuff that's going on in the world, right? So our main customer focus was a customer with a domestic spend. And a needed domestic spend, right? And that generally meant that their volume wasn't enough to be offshore, or their price points weren't so ridiculous that they had to be in a low cost country. They were a premium product, or the volumes sit right, or
Mhm.
for whatever reason they had a domestic spend. And so largely those are the people that we danced with for a long time. And somebody with a 30 or $40 million annual spend, we kind of never danced with. But now in today's world, we're seeing the phone ringing a little bit, and we're saying, hey, I want to take this piece off and make it available to you. And, can you do this? And how would you do that? And how do we keep our purchasing power on our big global spend? And we have some answers for them. So that's really the most recent trend.
Mhm.
The other thing that we tend to notice overall, especially as we get feedback of customers that visit multiple sites or are going through a bidding process and all that stuff. By the way, we like to be last, so we can provide them a good compare. Um, um, but as they're starting to come in through, we're starting to find more customers that value execution and value actually solving the problems. And early on, we ran into a lot of people that had problems but weren't willing to take a look at how they kind of did their order entry, or how they communicated, or from a supply chain side. And early on, they had said, that's an EMS provider. You guys just do all that, and we just want it, and stuff like that. And so as we get through this, I think we end up dancing with more right partners now, overall, both because of the tariff stuff, and then our continuing growth, and through some of this new name recognition that we've been able to build out in the industry, and the credibility that we have as people that know how to execute.
Yeah, no, that's very good. So tell me, it's been trying times here. You mentioned the tariffs, but
Yeah,
even over the last year or so, EMS has, it's I guess since COVID, really, there've been a lot of
yeah.
disruptions, up and down swings. What's your opinion on the EMS industry for the remainder of 25 and into next year? How do you see
Yeah.
the industry performing?
Yeah, and I talk to a lot of customers, and I talk to a lot of other friends and colleagues that are well entrenched in the industry. My perspective is really one of cautious optimism, in that the 25 orders continue to be relatively flat to 23, 24. There hasn't been a super amount of growth that's hitting. We have customers that are still in an over inventory of finished goods standpoint. Um, but we're seeing a really big influx of orders in 26. And so if you look at what our PO backlog today is related to 26 as it did in the past, it's really much larger. So we've got customers really preparing for kind of the engine to go in the economy, and for them to work through some of their current finished goods inventory. And so you ask them, hey, do you want to pull us in? It's like, hold on, wait, or here's the tariff situation. It's like, well, it changes every day. I kind of want to wait.
Yeah.
But you start getting into, okay, well, when you're going to launch that new product in 26, or are you going to get back to some previous levels? And by the way, you're going to start bumping into lead times. It's like, okay, I'm ready to go. Give me this. And so to me, I think we're in that little bit of a stall where we got to have some patience through the end of 25. And I think then this engine just picks up steam, the snowball rolls downhill, and I think
Mhm.
you're going to see a very robust U.S. manufacturing base. You're going to see a lot of growth. You look at the geopolitical and the potential investments that are secured for the U.S. So you've got a lot of electronics companies that are going to be spending a lot of dollars in the U.S. And I think as they start to build their infrastructure and build their teams and start
Mhm.
getting employees into the high tech sector, I think you'll see a tremendous amount of growth. And so we're really excited for the 26, 27 timeframe. We've got a lot of new customers with some really cool product launches that they have slated for that time period that we're really excited about. We've got a lot of new customers with what I would call a bit of pent-up demand. They're not at their average spend. They're weaning off a different supplier. And come that 26 timeframe, we expect to see a lot of really good things. And so cautious for the end of 25, but very optimistic for 26 and beyond.
Oh, that's excellent. I like that. And yeah, I think that lines up with what I'm hearing from other EMS as well. So that's good. And
And
that's, it comes across that you guys are very comfortable in with who you are, and you seem to be very well positioned for to grow and to continue to thrive in the years to come. So kudos to you for that.
Yeah, well, thank you. And as much as it comes across, it's a strategy. It's well defined. I mean,
Mhm.
ultimately, there is things that we didn't know were going to happen, but we have plans for all of this. And I tell you, knowing who you are and having the discipline to just be who you are two different things. And it requires a bit of a different mindset and a different approach, so that you don't try to say every sale is a good sale or every customer is a great customer
Mhm.
and that and so we felt once you got it on paper and we can communicate having a disciplined approach to who you are really helps in the long term.
Yeah. No, that's excellent. And I think you're a great testament to what I said at the beginning, all the good work being done by the companies that most people probably haven't heard of, right?
Yeah,
But that are doing
yeah,
such critical work, supporting so many industries across this country. So
yeah,
kudos to you. I wish you
yeah.
nothing but continued success up there in Wisconsin.
Great. From an industry standpoint, there's more than enough room for the big tier ones. They service customers. They do a lot of things exceptionally well. They set the pace. We look up to a lot of those type of companies
Mhm.
who are doing some amazing things internationally and across multiple things and bringing new products out. And then there's a bit of a niche of a customer that doesn't fit that mold, that still needs these same types of services, that still wants to develop a cloud or develop an app or to
Yeah.
take their largely mechanical product into an
Yeah.
electrical product. And from an SMT standpoint, I think we fit that very well. And to me, there's room for everybody within this. And technology is really improving at a pace that this electronics is just going to continue to grow more and more as they put electronics into everything. And the more bigger stuff the tier ones take, the more that gets squished out of their bottom, the more the SMT is there and ready for those customers that need our particular level of service.
Yeah. No, you make an excellent point. Not all business is right for the tier ones, right? I mean, there is, and even sometimes if I used to work for a small EMS, right? They'd go to the big, we'd say, listen, this is what's going to happen. Go do
Yeah,
that. And we'll be here when you
yeah,
want to come back, right? Because
yeah.
they oftentimes are just not well served there. They don't get the attention and the support that they really deserve. So,
Yeah. And therefore, from an SMT standpoint, they end up being a big fish in a much smaller pond. But we roll out our executive team and
yeah.
we have these relationships. And so when they communicate to us, here's this problem or here's that problem, we're already engaged. We know them intimately. A lot of my program managers know my customers' demand patterns better than the customers themselves. And so we'll often hear of PMs calling up and say, hey, you missed putting this on order. Don't you really need these right now? And they'll go, oh, thank you. Oh, you're a blessing. And I think it's sometimes those level of services and those relationships that make a big difference in those that really need to execute.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. But Brian, thank you. I could talk to you all day as a small EMS. It's such a great story, and it's a good reminder of the good work being done by EMS across this industry and in this country. So I wish you continued success. Hope to stay in touch and share any news and updates in the future.
Great. And I very much appreciate the opportunity. To give a platform to somebody of our size and to have some of these conversations is very meaningful. And I hope from a listener standpoint that they can pick up on a few different things and get an appreciation for the different types of EMS companies that are out there and eventually find the one that fits them much better.
Yeah, precisely right. Well stated. Brian, thank you again. Have a good rest of your day, sir.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.